Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here at the James D. Julia Auction House up in Maine, taking a look at some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their upcoming October of 2016 firearms auction. And what we're taking a look at today is one of the versions of the LeMat revolver that I didn't have a chance to take a look at in a previous video I did covering the whole development of this series of interesting grapeshot revolvers. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's not, did he fire 8 shots or 9, it's that looks awfully small for a LeMat or a LeMat revolver. You would be correct. The one most people are familiar with is this guy, which is substantially larger, leading to today's video subject being called the Baby LeMat. Now, these were originally developed actually for the Confederate Navy, believe it or not. The Navy didn't really need quite the gigantic horse pistol of a gun that the Confederate Army did. And they actually contracted to buy 2,000 of these pistols from LeMat in Paris. Now they're shrunken down. They only have a 4.5-inch barrel, and the main cylinder, the main revolver bore, is a 32 caliber barrel instead of 42 caliber like the original LeMats, and the center shotgun barrel has been brought down to 41 caliber. And what's interesting is on this particular one, it's also rifled. Now, originally on the full-size pistols, that was a 63 caliber or roughly 18 gauge smoothbore shotgun barrel. These, they brought that down to 41. However, you still had 9 rounds in the cylinder plus the center barrel, so quite a lot of firepower in a small package. So it was April of 1864 when these guns were originally ordered by the Confederate Navy, and they were supposed to get them in batches of 500 guns starting just a couple months later. LeMat had problems and frankly was completely unable to meet this schedule. In fact, he was unable to meet any deliveries of any kind. He was too busy building other guns, having payment trouble with other parts of the Confederate government. And by February of 1865, the Confederate Navy wrote back to him and canceled the contract. They hadn't received any guns at this point. The war is going really quite badly for them by February of 1865. They didn't have a lot of money lying around, and they just said, forget it, we're done. Don't bother. And at that point, 100 of the guns had been manufactured and were ready for inspection. Of course, due to the terms of the contract, they, in theory, wouldn't have sent them until there were 500. But when they get this letter canceling the contract, LeMat comes back and says, hey, you know, we've got 100. And the Confederate Navy kind of grudgingly accepts that they'll inspect those guns, and assuming that they pass inspection, they'll pay for them. But that's it. Don't bother making any more. So they're really quite scarce. Only no more than 100 were ever originally made, and only a handful of those are still known today. This is serial number 31, and let's take a closer look at it. All right, there's our size comparison again. You can see, really, the original LeMat in 42 caliber is a massive handgun. This is much more the size of a typical handgun of the period. It's quite comfortable. It's a lot lighter. Honestly, it's a really nice gun. So these Baby LeMats were made in the mechanical style of the very first LeMat guns. So we'll take a look at the mechanics in a moment, but first the markings. There you go, System LeMat, Brevet SGDG Paris. Now, where most of the LeMats very quickly production was moved to England, the Baby LeMats were all manufactured in Paris, so they'll all have this script on the top of the barrel flat. I mentioned this is serial number 31. You can see the number here on the barrel, here on the front of the frame. That LM star is LeMat, or LeMat. That's kind of his trademark inspection mark. We have a 31 here also on the cylinder, and we have a B mark right there on the front of the cylinder. So of course, if you're not familiar with the operation of the LeMat, you've got a cylinder with 9 rounds of 32 caliber muzzle loading ball and 9 percussion caps there. And what you do is cock the hammer. These are all single action guns. And when you fire, the hammer hits the percussion cap, fires the gun. Now you've also got this center barrel, which acts as the cylinder axis. You'd load that separately. And when you want to fire that one, you put a percussion cap here on this nipple, and then you would flip the firing pin down, or the front of the hammer. And when you do that, then it hits that center cap and fires the center barrel. Now this does get a little bit awkward in some ways, in that when you cock the hammer, it's going to rotate the cylinder a position. and it doesn't know or care if you're planning to fire the middle barrel or one of the cylinder chambers. So if you don't fire this last, you will skip a chamber. So disassembly here is also just like the full-size LeMats, although it's slightly simpler to do, actually. We have a plunger pin right here, which locks the barrel assembly onto the frame, and it's held in place just by a little tension spring there. So if I pull that out, then I can unthread the barrel. The end of the center axis barrel is threaded, as is this support on the main barrel. So that comes off, and then we can pull the cylinder off the front. You can see here we've got these plunger pin holes in the cylinder. Those were for, that was what locked the cylinder in position on the early style of LeMat. There's a pin right here, and when I cock the hammer, that pin is going to retract in. Then the hand lifts up, indexes the cylinder by one position, and then the pin comes out and locks the cylinder in place. That was a complex and expensive system that LeMat changed later in production, but not until after all the Baby LeMats had been manufactured. So I mentioned that the center barrel on this particular baby is rifled, and I'm shining a flashlight through the fire hole there, through the percussion cap hole, and you can see a bit of the rifling right there. A little tricky to get a camera angle on this, but this is, in fact, a rifled .41 caliber. Now, reloading the LeMat gives us a little bit of a pause. We have a loading lever here on the side of the barrel. This is, again, an early style of loading lever. And in order to load the cylinder chambers, what you would do is pour in powder, set a ball on top, and then you have this loading lever, which allows you to ram the ball down into place. However, well, and then you also have to deal with the center barrel. So, as is typical of LeMat, there is a removable ramrod right here, sits in there under a little bit of tension, and you use that to ram the center. Except, oh, we have a problem. The baby is short enough that you can't fit a long enough ramrod on the side of the barrel to load that center barrel. So there's a separate solution, and that is this decorative stud on the pommel, which is actually a ramrod extension threaded into the grip. So we have a tube there that is, it's only hollow a little ways down. So you can see it goes about that deep. Once that's in place, then we can set that in place. And now, so at this point, it's all the way down at the base. That gives you plenty of length with which to set your center charge. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's cool to be able to add one more very scarce version of the LeMat revolver to the archive we have going, showing the whole sphere of LeMat Grapeshot revolvers, from the very earliest Belgian-made guns up to the very last centerfire cartridge guns. So if you have a LeMat collection, or you just want, you know, these things are big, they're bulky, they're heavy, they're kind of awkward. This Baby LeMat is a much more comfortable gun in the hand, and it's really quite cool. Honestly, if they had made them in this pattern to begin with, they might have sold a whole lot more of them and been a lot more successful. Well, if you'd like to have this one yourself, make sure to check the description text below. You'll find a link there to the Julia auction catalog page on this pistol, where you can take a look at their pictures and their description and place a bid over the phone, or come up here to Maine and participate in the auction live. Thanks for watching.